be on June the 3rd, will now be on June the 17th. Our guest.
Okay, well, tonight it's a slideshow. One of those old-fashioned things. You can go to sleep if you like. I hope you don't. But it will be about an hour, and we'll just go through about 80 photographs that I've taken over the last 10 years, between 1977 and 1987. I have prepared very few notes. When I was asked to do this, I wasn't quite sure what to call this lecture. So, as a really blanket sort of coverage, I thought travelling photography would do it. And I've travelled as far as Devonport, Rakino, and to Europe and other far-off places. But this is basically it's travel photography and travelling photography. See if you can spot the difference. Now, there was a book written by John Fowles called Aristos, and he said the simplest purpose of the artist is to describe the outer world. The next is to express his or her feelings about that outer world, and the last is to express your feelings about yourself. Somewhere in these photographs, I don't know about the last, there'll be something of those points. And he had two tests to apply to any work of art, whether it's photography or painting, and it was to satisfy yourself as the first point, and the other was to satisfy and please others. So let's get on with it. We have the lights. You want that? Arrange yourself so you can see what's happening. The lecture, it's not a lecture, it's a slideshow. Please ask questions whenever you like, interrupt. Any questions whatsoever. Philosophical, practical, anything. Now I started this, this is in 1977.
Excuse me, Robin, I think we need to lift it up
Considerably more, right. Who's having problems?
Everybody.
Oh, great. No, I'll find something. I'll have to take this off.
this large box of that hill.
Okay, we'll try it. Yeah.
It's very heavy.
Push it slightly onto the.
It's the
one side down more than the other.
Okay. Is that better? Yes. Right. This is Indonesia. Java. Straightforward travel photography. I was doing some photographs for UTA Airlines. So very straightforward. I photographed what I saw, what appeared before the camera. Just looking down from a bridge on a couple of water buffalo being washed by their owner. But I like the shape and the arrangement and the contrast in the colours. This was some of the first travel colour photography that I did. I mostly worked in black and white before this. So I was really finding out about what colour does. All this is Kodachrome, by the way. Markets, of course, very, very popular for photography. But nowhere you go in Indonesia can you take a photograph and not be seen. Someone is always aware of you.
When are these? These about 77?
1977, yeah. And apart from that little boy before, everyone smiles too. This is I think it's obviously for the benefit of the camera, but I feel everyone there feels obliged to smile, I think. Not just because I was a tourist. I think it's their attitude towards being seen by someone else. Again, straightforward, sort of photojournalism. What you see, and is photographing what really, basically, what was there, and what appealed to me. These were street squatters living in a cardboard hut at the side of the road. She's cooking, making the manioc, I think. Sieving the flour, the side of the footpath. Same sort of thing, lots of street life. They just had their bath at the well in the village. Now this one perhaps needs a bit more explanation. There was a travelling group of players. They ate glass and, by the looks here, boot each other's bums, and fire breathing, magic tricks. They travel from village to village, putting on shows. No schooling, of course. I like the little bit of sun on the boy on the ground on his hand there. It shone through. Don't forget to ask questions, please.
Did you know the sun was there when you took the photograph?
No, I didn't. Now this is actually a jump in time, but this is Rakino. The phone box on Rakino Island. And this is just purely, simply the warmth of the light. It's a very, I think well, to me it's a very sensual sort of photo. The warmth of the colours and the feeling of the Gulf. It's a wonderful telephone box if you ever go to Rakino Island.
Same, yeah.
It's free too.
What time of day?
That's right, late in the evening. Back to the sun, obviously. And this is this is not Kodachrome. This is Fujichrome 400. A very fast film, but I've come to use it a lot more recently because it allows you so much more latitude in the time and place you're shooting, and more depth of field because you've got that greater speed. It's grainier.
What lens are you using?
That's a zoom lens. 28 to 85 zoom I use.
Brand?
Sorry?
Brand?
Takina. Very cheap. Very good. The whole ethos of expensive equipment I've got less and less interested in, I must say. Now, I've used Leicas and all those the good cameras, but I honestly find it terribly hard to tell the difference, if at all.
Who did you processing on?
Sorry?
Processing?
It's just straightforward lab processing. It's all colour transparency, obviously, and it's just straightforward. The speed I nominated was processed at 400.
Do you find processing facilities of an equal, near enough standard?
Yes, I do. I haven't had any trouble with processing. This goes back again. This is about 1978, I think. This is Kodachrome on a tripod, obviously, so you get at this time of day to get the moon and the lights. But it's very hard to get Kodachrome processed. Well, you can't get it processed here. It has to go away, so it takes 2 or 3 weeks to come back, and that's a big problem. Especially if it's commissioned work. People want it the day after, virtually. Again, just looking at the essential qualities of light. And this is from the same time as I did the book on the South Island, From the Road. This wasn't in the book, but I thought it was quite a good shot of a pine plantation, baby pine plantation. You can just see the pines. That was an excuse, of course. And one of my favourites from the South Island book, this boy suspended, when you look very closely, by a wire from his head to the surf bathing pavilion. That's all changed now. That's they've built another shed in front of it. I've only included one caravan in this. I don't want to be hoisted by my own cliches. But I did like that one, the captured one. It's a corralled caravan. That's in the west coast. It's way north of Westport. It's inland, fairly dreary part of the country. Old coal mining area, bush felling. One of my favourite pieces of batch architecture, I think, in the country, with 4 letterboxes.
Where's that?
That's at it's outside Christchurch. One of the sorry.
Is that up by that beach, north of Christchurch? They have a lot of clipped heads.
Oh, hello. Yeah, it's I forgot the name of the beach now. 1979. This, my memory's fading.
By the Green Park or Birdlings.
Yeah, it's not Birdlings. Could well be Green Park or the other one there. The no, I think it must be the Green Park huts. Same place. I wondered about the height of the people in there and where they actually stood. Of course, this is straightforward photography too, but I think there is another element. I mean, it's the choosing of how you photograph the given that makes it interesting. I mean, someone else would photograph that quite differently from me, I'm sure. And that's what I like about photography. The given expressed differently.
That thing you were saying about the height,
Yeah.
obviously when you see it, when you come across it in the flesh, you probably think of that quite quickly, but looking at the photo, it probably takes the viewer a while to sort of start, after looking at lots of other things before they cotton onto that fact and notice the walks.
That's right, yeah.
Have you thought about how you communicate those sorts of humorous things?
Well, yes, that's a good point, because when I saw that, I thought, one of the immediate things I thought, there's a problem for a tall person. But so I took the photograph, and I think this is why I like having work published in books, a series of photographs to give an impression rather than individual images on a wall. I much prefer the published image. By the way, there's 10 books in there if you want to have a look afterwards, so you can see the way they're used through books, these different images. I like the series. That's what I think photography is very strong at. It's a medium that's made for reproducing in a book, whereas I think paintings are obviously much more able to hang on walls than photographs.
Much more singular images.
Yeah, singular images.
So you think
But this is a singular image, but it goes with a lot of others too that I
you
did.
can reinforce something like that, sort of the same type of aspect, by repeating it. I mean, not necessarily specifically that.
You repeat the same idea, the same view.
Ideas,
Yeah,
and then you start hammering into the viewer's head.
yeah. Number 59. I was very disappointed to see this had disappeared when I went down to the West Coast recently. Not surprising, of course. And I do like that photo, right down to the boot of the Holden open. This is of course another aspect of this sort of photography. It's documentary as well. There's a lot of photographs I took in that South Island book have, well, the places themselves have been pulled down, or certainly a number of the people have died, and not because I took their photographs, I hope. But of course, after 10 years like this, I become conscious of the time going by, and people vanishing and things vanishing. I mean, Auckland is just incredible the way it's changing. I have a project I want to start very soon on Auckland, another one of tackling the cliche, but I want to try and make it a different sort of book. But even if I work very fast, I'm going to miss most of it, the old Auckland anyway. Another one of my favourite images of people on the West Coast and at Blackball. Old time, he was one of the first organisers of the FOL, and it started in Blackball. It was organised first in Blackball. Miner, good solid Labour man, and his wife. They very rarely ate in the parlour. This is the.
How would you approach them?
Very, very directly. I saw him working in his garden and asked if I could take his photograph of his house, and got talking to him and asked if I could take a photograph inside.
When you were framing that picture, Robin, did you see the image in the mirror?
Only after I'd set it up on the camera. It wasn't a conscious effort to do. Then I saw it and I thought, well, why not?
Did you know who he was before you went along, or did you just pick on them cold in the garden?
I was just walking around the town and saw him.
How long would it have taken?
To do that shot?
Yes.
Well, I suppose I spent about half an hour in their company, but to set it up in the parlour, there, 5-10 minutes, I suppose, because I always photograph around a subject, and I took obviously some more exteriors, and one in his garden and one in front of the house. In fact, I've been back there 2 or 3 times and re-photographed him.
They look at ease with the camera.
Yes, I think they do. Same with these blokes. Their mum was an orange person. One of the what's that? Rajneesh. Not all together on the top 50 favourites of religious people these days. Rajneesh, but that accounts for their orange hair. You see. Fairly wild little kids living down the West Coast on a commune. and Norm Smith.
Which one's Norm?
Well, I should have told you, it's not Pebbles, right? He's not Pebbles. Pebbles is the sheep. Same glinty eye.
Is that a case of the owner looking like a pet?
Yeah, I think so. Now, he said to me that he was much happier there than in his house in Christchurch. He could go out there with a flagon of sherry and be quite happy. This is at Green Park Huts, for those who are Christchurch people.
Flagon of sherry and the sheep is all he needs, huh?
There's something about his watch too. I had to put one more sheep in because I am a good New Zealander, and
We never believed you didn't paint it. Seriously?
Maybe you painted me at the Valiant, didn't you?
no, I have been accused of taking a spray cans around with me. It's not true.
Did you ever find out why or how it happened?
No, I didn't want to inquire too closely. Never know what sort of terrible explanation. It's much better sort of wondering about it, I think. Again, I suppose this is photographing what's there, but I mean, I photographed the sheep fairly close up, and then I thought, no, this makes a much better picture, a broader view with the sheep just there. It doesn't focus just entirely on the sheep.
Better in terms of subject matter.
Yeah, it gave it more to wonder about and more to more to think about, I guess. This is Hamilton. The hotel down there, the old hotel that was changed, it's been changed to an art gallery and restaurants and things. I was commissioned to photograph what was there before it was all changed. I rather like the bathroom.
Did you put the light on it? Or?
No, there's no light in any. Oh, no, I'm lying. Later on, I'll point out where I've lit the. That'll be obvious anyway. Lit the photographs. This is all natural light.
What sort of length exposure?
Sorry?
What sort of length exposure?
Oh, long exposure, but it doesn't really matter. If you've got a good tripod, you can just open the lens up and let it record on the film. A good handheld exposure meter is very important.
Do you use that in all your photos?
What's that?
A handheld meter?
No, not the exterior stuff. I just use the meter in the camera, plus judgment. That's again in that same hotel.
You like photographing numbers?
It looks like it, doesn't it? And I think numbers just appear. I don't do that.
Going out a bit later.
Another. There's 3 photographs here of ferns. I did a fern book last year. It took years to photograph. But it's photographing the given. I can't put an interpretation on what is there, unlike, say, a blue sheep or some of those other ones. This is a commissioned work and someone else's subject matter, and so I photograph in the best way, the most direct way of the given. So I suppose it leaves you room for some sort of interpretation, like the weather, what you can choose to photograph in the wet or not. It's the sun shower and the waitakaris. But it certainly makes it look, well, a bit different from the usual mamakus. And a king fern. I like the depth of the greens in that.
Are you still using Fuji there? Or have you...
No, this is all Kodachrome. And some kidney ferns on Rangitoto. With that baby one coming up in the middle. Now, that other photograph, one of the kidney ferns, was, I suppose, taken from about 8 inches away. This is from about 12,000 feet. This is a section here of aerial photography. I wanted to show some of that to prove it doesn't have to be just cities and suburbs. This is the Great Sandy Desert in Western Australia. Another series of commissioned photographs. It's in a book called Wild Australia, which is over there. You can have a look at later. I love that pink. Absolutely trackless piece of desert, just numbingly arid.
Would you know what that line of vegetation is called for? Is that a fence line?
Where's that?
On the lower right hand corner. Was there grazing over this area?
I suppose stock may have wandered over there. I wouldn't think so. There's hardly anything there.
I see a very distinct line.
Oh, that line. I think that just.
It seems to be right up the right side. The far right side.
Where the pink stops. Yeah, there's.
So it's following the river.
Well, you see, right at the back, there's also a river course, but it's. I guess in freak years it would flood, and there would be a bit of vegetation, more than. It probably does flood a bit, but it must be very rare. That's off the west coast of Australia, Coral Atoll, right up north. These are the atolls the Dutch and used to smash into in the middle of the night and disappear when they were going to Batavia. They hadn't worked out how to go. What was it? The longitude they hadn't worked out. Latitude they know about. They came round the Cape of Good Hope, went straight for Australia, and if it was night, I used to hit it. It's a lake full of lilies. You see the little lily pads. I suppose that's about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. Very simple and straightforward, but just getting a shape that looks a little bit more interesting. It's good fun aerial photography, actually. I quite enjoy that. You've got a fast shutter speed and to stop the shake, the vibration of the aeroplane. There's no problem. The zoom lens helps too. All these were zoom lens.
Fast film?
Sorry?
Did you use the camera meter for a shot like that?
Yes, but I'd also judge what the meter, interpret what the meter told me. I'd probably stop down half a stop for that to get the depth and density.
The ASA 4?
Sorry?
The ASA 4?
We're using fast film.
No, that was all Kodachrome 64. Most of this is Kodachrome 64. Lake Victoria in Western Australia again. So it looks like a bit of brain or something nasty. This is a small series of gum trees I've known. This is a salmon gum in Australia. After a while, if you're out in the outback, you come a bit pushed to find things to photograph. So I did a few sort of close-ups of some gums. They've become quite anatomical.
This is why you preferred the broader view of the area here, was it? In Australia?
No, I had to do some aerials because of the sheer distance, but no, I like a mix of things.
Was this commission work, Robert?
Yes, this was a year's work. That's a snow gum. In Kosciuszko, right up in the in the summer, right up on the top of the mountains. And that's a ghost gum. Well, that's the end of the anatomy lesson. We'll go on. Oh, sorry?
Do you use filters as well?
No filters. Oh, apart from something to protect the lens, you know, a UV filter, a skylight filter. A couple of wildlife, blue dragonfly, and another Australian. That was in the river where that fisherman was snapped up a few weeks ago in the Kakadu National Park. He's wonderful, this crocodile. More from the same, this is from the same book, Wild Australia. And this one, these were all taken in national parks, and obviously this is a feature of the park, this lichen that grows on the rocks. And it just sweeps down to the sea like that. It's very dangerous, and there's warnings all over that rock. Don't go any further because it gets steeper and steeper and you just go over the edge. But I waited until the wave broke just like that. It just adds another, just another slight dimension to what can be page after page of photographs of nature with a capital N.
It makes it more interesting.
Well, that's probably the word I'm looking for.
Was this a difficulty you had on this assignment?
Yeah, it was. Because I was travelling for so long. I spent 3 weeks on the road and a week back in Sydney to recover, if that was the word. But after a while you got dull to what you were seeing, and so you really had to work at it to keep your mind alert and looking for interesting new ways of photographing what was there. It's Fraser Island, the big sand island off Queensland. Superb. That was about 7 o'clock in the morning, right up the tip of the island. No one there. No one had walked on that sand hill. It was the edge of the world. Wonderful feeling.
In those 3 weeks, how many exposures?
About 40 or 50 rolls of film. No, more, sometimes 80. All 35mm Kodachrome, yeah. I wasn't paying for it. This sort of thing I quite like too, the depth in it, the dark, oily, stagnant waters. This is for an English travel magazine called Departures. I went there last year. This is Ayers Rock, on Ayers Rock, but very difficult to get Ayers Rock to look different or something. What was that? Sir Robert, is it? This is another Australian book that I did, but it was all historic Australian towns. I loved the incredibly graceful stairway and the floor. This is in Sydney, the old courthouse in Sydney. All available light on a tripod and with a handheld meter. Plenty of exposure. This is the roof of a malt house again in Sydney. That's torn down now. That was for the Heritage Council of New South Wales. No, that was handheld as well. And a lot of bracketing, of course.
What sort of handheld meter were you using?
No, it's a... I've forgotten the name of it. It's an American one. I'm sorry, I'll try and remember. I'll tell you later. Ask me later. What? No. They're not sensitive enough down the lower end of the scale. Sydney from my apartment window. In a mist. Very straightforward, but I rather like the feeling of that city. It's a very dramatic city, that. Now you can't read this very well. Up on the left it says Design Centre. It's on the harbour in Sydney. I enjoy taking night photographs, just putting on the tripod and seeing what happens with a long exposure. The Design Centre on the left, and those great power chimneys. Or is that the CRS? No, it's very hard to see from here what that photo is all about.
Would you have done just one of that shot or?
No, several. Because especially for exposures like this at night, it's very difficult to just say, okay, that's the reading that's going to be best. I'll always bracket around it. And some of the exposures might be 3 or 4 minutes or 1 or 2 minutes. Of course, the bridge. How do you photograph the harbour bridge? Very difficult. It's like photographing Rangitoto. There I was trying for lots of information. I've got hundreds of photographs of the harbour bridge. Well, that's the war memorial in Hyde Park in Sydney, with some of the more profane architecture. So I rather like that war memorial. It looks like a big sort of jube or something, green jube. The clarity of this, I enjoyed. Everything's still and lit from one side. Absolutely. That looks about 28mm to me. It's from my apartment window again.
Fairly early in the morning?
No, very late in the evening. No, no filters. I haven't used any filters in any of these. This man, I rather liked. A very itchy bum. I think he's Australian. I don't like to think of New Zealanders going over there and looking like that, however. On Bondi Beach, where else? Now this woman was meant to be promoting this beer in Alice Springs. And it was evidently pretty appalling beer, so they were trying to sell it very hard. And she was very drunk, wandering around with glasses of beer, pouring it down people's throats. And a wedding, an Italian wedding in Hyde Park, the Botanical Gardens. The little girl on the left, I loved her hand on her hip. It's very Italian, all the kids dressed up, absolutely over the top. And another wedding. This next sequence is the only one that I've used. This is a little compact 35mm fixed lens with a flash on it. So this is the way I did these ones. Very easy, very automatic. This is the gay Mardi Gras up Oxford Street. The bride is looking grim. And it says up the top, the honest Scotsman. I don't know what that's got to do with anything, but... There's certain decadence there. I must say, it was a wonderful change from the deserts. Now here's another change too. This is Sissinghurst in London, in England, in Kent. Most wonderful gardens in the world. Well, the ones I've been to anyway. Don't really know. Beautiful place. The English light is it's a cliche, I know, but it is different. It's so soft and old and polluted.
It's nice though, isn't it, the photographs?
Yeah. It was after a rain. It had rained in the gardens, and it just... I don't usually do flower photographs, but this one I took to. I couldn't resist. This is Kodachrome. This is Fujichrome 400 for those interested.
How old is that slide?
Old, 84.
Do you notice any colour deterioration?
Not yet.
Do you notice it getting new slides?
No. I notice in some of the older Kodachromes I'm getting. I've had problems with the mould, the fungus diseases. Not much you can do about it except keeping it in proper humidity controlled and environment and all that sort of thing.
You don't do that.
Well, I try and keep a heater on. No, I'm a little too laissez-faire with photographs, I'm afraid. Right. Greenwich Park. That's a flash, yeah. I tell lies, don't I? This is the only other one, all right? No, I lived for a year in England and I was staying in Greenwich and spent a lot of time walking up and down the riverbank and the wharves round there. And business wasn't bright at the beginning. So I spent a lot of time just photographing for myself. I suppose this is more the old, what you'd think of England and the wharf areas with the brick, the Wren Church and the brick walls. This is all slightly more complex. It's an old people's home. It was a hospital, and then, but behind it was this power station with these massive chimneys, and the moon.
Where's that?
That's in Greenwich, right on the riverbank. Again in Greenwich, on the riverbed and the ladder going up. Very atmospheric, that place. Stinking. And this is a nicer part of Greenwich. This, you can't really see this. It's what's to say, the navigable waterways and roads of Great Britain. It's in a pub. This is the pub. That wonderful English institution, Lady Summer Light. That's also on the riverbank. There's nowhere else in the world you can get that sort of atmosphere with that sort of light. Well, I don't think you can.
You would have needed a handheld mirror for that one.
No, I didn't actually. I just used what the camera told me. I took a reading, say, about the centre of the photograph. I bracketed too. This is the part of England I don't like. I mean, it's colourful, but this is what's ruining the landscape of England. Is the great fields that are ploughed and put into barley, and that's rape flower, plant flower, that yellow. And so it goes for mile after mile after mile. Rip up the hedgerows and woods and copses. It becomes very desolate. This is in Wiltshire. The English at play on a pebbly beach. There's a couple there looked extremely uncomfortable on the back after a while, I would think. And where would you be without the pier and Chris Mannion's Holiday Fun? I mean, this has become an obvious thing to do now too, a cliche, that the English at play. But they are wonderful. This is Eastbourne, a pier at Eastbourne. A chilly midsummer's day.
Were you waiting for that shot?
No, I crept up behind her. These are the great cliffs, white cliffs, and you can see how tall they are by the height of the lighthouse down there. Anyone know a kid's book called The Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch? Rhondda and David Armitage. That's the lighthouse. They took us to this cliff top. We lay and looked over the edge, just like those people are doing. Very hard not to. What's that? This photo? No. Same place a little bit further down the coast. I really enjoy this one. It's very quiet somehow, very still English summer. Everything disappearing into the haze. You don't need telephoto lenses in England because they don't work. You can't see any further than a 200 mil will allow. A modest German statue. I spent a couple of weeks in Germany for a magazine, and this is the only photo I came out with that I even liked. Well, it was okay, but there was only one look of the place, and it was snow. It was very, very cold. It was January, and this is the only place that I got any amusement out of, this park full of gold statues. And this is in Paris, obviously, with more statues, and I would have liked to have known what that black man did. He had the bowler hat and the red socks and the red shirt. I like the interchange, the unspoken interchange between those two people. This is in Paris and Luxembourg Gardens.
Did you ever strike problems photographing people without asking their permission first?
Only once really, not in Europe. Once in Blackball in the South Island. It's one of the very few times I've had problems. And I was photographing, it was an old car yard there, and I think there were some old hot cars there or something, and he got very angry and cross and came racing out. And I stood my ground and said, well, I'm on public property, I can photograph what I like. But he was bigger than me, and meaner, so I left. Discretion's often a good way to cope with these things. Luxembourg Gardens again. I didn't see the woman at first on the right. lying down. And another one too. Those two men very animatedly talking, completely ignoring this woman. The fluffy dog, I think.
She's got a fur coat on.
And the last section is Ireland. And I didn't take a spray can. No, that was Connemara, I think. When I was in Ireland, I found out where New Zealand's sense of colour comes from. In some of our houses, anyway.
Yeah, so you seem to find the same buildings and the same people no matter where you go.
Yeah, not often in England though. People don't paint their houses like this there. And in Europe, as far as I know. The sign says the Ballydehob races. So it's a little village in the south, County Cork. Outside Mr. Cleary's bar. Very hard to avoid the bars in Ireland, of course. Now this is in someone's house. He's this man was a farrier with the Pope and St. Who would that be? I don't know my saints. I find quite a lot of similarities with this and that one in the South Island, that old couple, probably the same background. West Coast being a lot of Irish settled. Fortunately, they've done away with a lot of the religious pictures in this country.
When were these taken?
These are 85.
The South Island and there are obviously both fond of pink paint as well.
Yep. It must have been a special job lot.
Were you there working, or was...
No, this was for a book called The Irish Village. In fact, they didn't use this photo. Most of the best photographs they didn't use. This is a problem that comes up with being commissioned for a job. You don't get to do the final editing. And so if I take 1,000 photographs, I might choose, say, 150 for a book, but they'll choose almost a completely different 150. So you have that problem of having a book, which is yours, but it's not your final choice. And it's the editing, which is almost the most important. Obviously, you've got to have the material, but it's an extremely important part of the whole process.
They didn't use that one?
No, they didn't use that one.
Did they choose all the cliches?
A lot more of them.
Do you
Landscapes and things.
do you keep the photos they don't use?
Well, I pilfer them actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. They legally own copyright to all this. This is the iniquity of the copyright laws. It's the only copyright laws in the world are the American ones, which have been changed recently, which are in the photographer's favour. The common market countries are changing. I believe there's a move in Australia and New Zealand to get the copyright laws changed. So the person that pushes the shutter owns the copyright, so that you own those photographs, even though someone else is being, commissioned you to do the job.
So you couldn't really put an alternative book with your choice of photographs on the same.
I don't suppose they'd really mind the people I've been working for, but they no, and I couldn't really, I suppose.
Robin, if you take 1,000, I mean, you submit the 1,000 and they choose.
That was a figure off the top of my head. If I
No, I know, but I mean, the whole lot, don't they?
Yep. the whole lot.
Pull out any that you actually felt really negative about.
Well, other than, say, bad exposures, which I'd chuck away before they saw, but no, I can't, because I edit them all at this particular publisher's offices, and I mean, if I take a lot of landscape, if you're travelling around the country and you take a landscapes, obviously you're going to do that, and you're going to be drawn to the obvious as much as anyone else. But you might necessarily choose that later to put in a book, but they will, because they have an idea of how they want that book to look, and their salespeople will say, well, we're selling this to the Americans, we've got to show Ireland in a better light than you're going to choose the photographs. So there's so many considerations. That's why the only real freedom is a book that it's self-motivated, and they're very few and far between, those ones.
So it makes you actually think twice about what you're shooting.
Yes, it can do. Yeah.
What about the one on the South Island? Did you have a choice in that?
Everything. I chose everything. Yeah. But then some of those I'd rather change now. But by and large, you know, I think the choice was right. I think that's the hardest part, is the editing. They didn't put this one in either. And this is the first photograph I took when I got to Ireland. I happened across these people, very poor people, a very odd child behind there. In Ireland, they keep them at home, and there doesn't seem to be any social welfare. I don't think the church does a lot for the people there in social ways. The chook and the cats and the very, I don't know how you describe the family, without sounding condescending, I suppose.
Did you take the photo quickly, or had you talked to them?
Oh, I talked to them.
Yeah.
I took quite a number of these. But I was quite impressed with the obvious poverty and the sort of life I didn't think really existed much in Europe anymore. This old lady, well, not all that old. I went into her drapery shop and I thought, this is great, I'd love to get a photograph. And she was keen, but she said, well, look dear, you should have come next month, because I'm having the whole shop done and it's going to be all lovely and new and modern, and you'll much prefer it. And I said, I'll take it now, thank you. Because there's not many of these left either now. This is the documentary aspect of these.
Is that tripod or hand?
Yeah, no, it's tripod. Kodachrome, plenty of depth of field, so everything, you get all the information is sharp and available.
A fairly long exposure for that?
No, about a quarter of a second, eighth of a second perhaps. Maybe a bit longer.
That's not Mrs. Duggan Matacanui's estranged wife, is it?
Could well be. No, she was out the back in Matacanui. I met her. There's a bar in Ballydehob, a little village in Cork, and it's my Guinness. And they insisted I have it. It was only 10 o'clock in the morning. Oh dear, you better have a Guinness for your travels.
And did you?
I did. I had to be very careful of that though. There's no drinking in the pubs while you're on this sort of travelling. You just go to sleep, or you just can't get enough work in. Done.
Were there a lot of people in there?
No. Lovely spring day, you can see from the daffodils.
Was it a conscious decision to leave the glass there?
Well, it was. Yeah, I was there. No, I didn't move it. That was what it amounted to. It was a conscious decision not to move it. No, I wouldn't mess with this one. She was a toughie. 2:15 on a rainy Monday afternoon in an awful part of the country. It's the most depressing place. This, as of course, wasn't used in the book either. The previous one was.
Fairly long exposure.
Yeah, that was 100-watt bulb that lit the bar, so that was quite a long exposure.
So you're actually asking them to stand still?
Yeah, yeah.
And who started it? Who was the half drink?
What's that?
Who was the half drunk drink? Some shot, camera shot.
That was a camera shot. That was me. Yeah. Another rule broken at lunchtime, eh?
So is that quite frequent?
Well, they help.
Very hard to go into a bar and actually not drink. And that's the other thing in England and Ireland. Of course, that's the only place you can get something to eat. Virtually, there's a few cafes, but it's much more likely to go to a bar for a sandwich. And the next one's the last one. Rather more cheery bar with a wonderful little boy down the end watching his very drunk grandfather clapping. It was after a confirmation there'd been dozens and dozens of kids confirmed, and the not the parish priest, the local area, whatever he is, came down to officiate in this little fishing village, and everyone was terribly happy at the end of the day, as you can see, except for that little boy. He was happy enough, but a little bemused. There's one thing I did miss in this pub was I missed photographing was a fight between these two women, and I'm not sure what the fight was about, but it was really all go, and I'd never seen that in a bar before. It was quite such venom and foul language. This is a fishing town. It was real fishwives' language. I'll look in the book. That's the other thing about doing all this, a lot of travelling. I go to so many places I can't remember the names offhand.
How do you keep track of it? Something like the book?
I have to write them down as I go.
Excuse me, Robin, if I turn on the lights now, perhaps the people could continue to talk to you for a while.
Yeah, sure. That's the best thing to do. I'd like to have a look at some of the books over there. They're in the other room there. And just to see what they have chosen for a lot of these assignments. So you get an idea of what's included and what's not. So if there's any other questions.
Robin, how did you go about getting commissions? Did you work through an agency, or did you go straight to publishers and magazines, or what?
For these books?
Yeah.
I went to a publisher in Thames and Hudson and said, showed them books that I'd done, and said, would you be interested in anything? And most people say no, but occasionally you get a response. I've done 4 books for them now, and another 2 this year. So it was well worth going to see them. Knocking on doors and taking what you've already done. Yeah. Walking down by in the parks and down by the river and knocking on publishers' doors. Yeah.
Were you waiting for that to happen, or did you come across it?
Well, on Rakino was that telephone box which has always appealed to me, and I waited till the end of the day because I knew the light was really good then.
Sydney?
And well, I was living in this apartment, I saw that every day, so I just got my camera out when it was looking good. I've got a huge collection from my apartment window.
Another book?
No, don't think so. No, private view.
fashion that this tends to disappear or becomes too damaged or something.
Well, that's the problem with 35mm. They get so damaged. A lot of that South Island material can't be printed again. It's ruined, and some printers have got the habit of cutting the perforations off the bottom of the slide too, which makes it very hard to handle. And the mould goes on it, and they tend to put a lacquer on it to put on the drum when they're doing the separations, and they can muck it up too. And I've lost one book. Well, Sense of Place. The whole lot of all the photographs have been lost. Everyone's blaming everyone else. No one knows where they are.
So that's another good reason for branding.
That's another good reason why to use plenty of film when you're photographing something like that.
You don't keep copies of the slides then?
Well, the copies of slides are very unsatisfactory, really, because no matter how well they're copied, real pictures do, they're not the same. You can use them. I should really use them for showing for things like this. They're adequate for that, but for reproduction they're not. The colour density goes, or there's a slight colour shift, which makes it, I don't know, unsatisfactory. And the grain structure is different. So if you want a Kodachrome look, you're not going to get it with a tube.
I noticed that virtually all your slides and every single photo of South Island from the road is in the horizontal 1 by 1.5 format. No sides cropped. Are you conscious of that?
No slides cropped.
No sides cropped. In other words, you've taken the full width,
Yeah.
full one, and they are all horizontal.
Yeah,
As most of these were. I just wondered whether that was something you did deliberately or whether it just works out with you.
well, I prefer the horizontal one to the vertical for most things. I find the vertical on 35mm too high, too tall actually. It's not quite comfortable. But no, I think most of the ones in the South Island were landscape anyway. Whether there are people in the landscape or not, that was the way it was, and just sort of fitted in like that. And of course, it's such a small area to be photographed using. You want to use the whole thing anyway, so there's no room for cropping at all.
There must be times in your travels when you come to a certain place that has the feeling that it would have a fantastic picture, but the light's not right or the feeling's not right. Would you go back there again and again until it came right?
Oh yes, if I had the opportunity, I would. Yeah. But like on some of these occasions, I couldn't because the pressure to get from one place to another. I mean, I did that book on Ireland in 5 weeks, and that's a lot of area to cover really.
So it depends on the time.
If I really, sometimes I could, and obviously I would if I possibly could. But other times you just have to take what's given. And obviously a lot of the landscapes and things would be better with at a different time of the evening.
Yes, would you feel tempted to try the use of some special effect or filter or something to try and make that photo to what you would consider to be ideal?
No, I honestly, it's not laziness, but I really can't be bothered to do it. It's just not something I've got a whole set of filters which I've never used. I thought, yes, I might do that to give a bit of intensity or a little bit of colour to a very blue landscape, say, that was in the middle of the day. But no, I don't. It's not that I think necessarily it's cheating, but I just don't do it.
Do you ever feel it wasn't worthwhile doing a book with all the ones that you wanted rather than published?
Oh no, that's an exaggeration if I said that. Obviously some of them they've used that have been good. Yeah, sometimes I think I'd rather not have it seen. But I've been very, I've steeled myself tonight and they're all there. So you can see the cliches as well.
Polarising filters.
Yeah.
Intensification that's possible with them. I take it from what you said that you haven't bothered about it.
I used to use them really for the application of shooting through glass or something, you know, to get rid of the reflections. But apart from that, I never used them. No. Because you get that over-intensification, which looks fake to me. And apart from filters to keep out the dust and dirt, that's all. The light should be enough that's there. What was this for? Sorry?
I thought you said when you were first taking your photos, you were up to this.
Yeah, well, that was the days I did a lot of work for the listener, and so they were all in black and white, and that's the way I started in photography. I didn't do colour till really quite late, apart from photographs of my children and that sort of thing. But so colour as for a job was something I came to 10 years ago.
So you don't do any black and white?
Very little. Partly because I've come to. I used to reject colour in many ways because it was such an obvious, unmanipulable. Is that the word? It'll do. Because you're photographing what's there. I mean, and you can't change that really, except with filters, and I didn't want to do that. Whereas black and white is a whole different thing. You can make an image on the print that's really quite different from the thing that you photographed. I still like doing black and white, but I don't do it. I mean, I would if I was asked. I just don't have the opportunity. So everything I do now is colour. No, I use a 6x7 format, large 6, the Pentax 6.7. I quite like using it for some things, for interiors and architectural work. It's a very, very refined and fine-grained sort of format. Yeah. No, they don't seem to mind. You couldn't really tell the difference, could you, on that? Depends how big the image is going to be used. If it's going to be used that big in a book, you'll notice a difference, but it's qualitatively, I don't think there's a big difference. And for some things, I think it's probably better. You use that, don't you?
I was going to ask you that then. Because Susan said you were using amethyst for the ferns.
No.
I don't know where she got
That's
that
always
idea.
copium.
She said you changed from Fuji because it gave them a purple tone.
Yeah.
Or mauve.
Anything else?
What did you use for those interiors that you did for Interiors magazine? Fuji?
Copium.
And that was
For Interiors magazine, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of magazine stuff I do here, I do on 6x7, and that's Fuji Chrome 100.
And you still use available light for like interior work as well?
Yeah. That got people very worried actually in England, because there used to people come in with Polaroid backs and lights, and also what are they called? They send dresses, set dresses, or people come along and arrange everything in advance. And I used to go with a 35mm tripod and do everything.
And no assistant?
that didn't get them bothered.
Did you choose the places you were set up?
No, these were all commissioned. Magazine stuff.
What's your first job?
My first job ever? It was for a magazine in London called IT, and I was asked to photograph a demonstration, anti-racist demonstration in London in 1967. I didn't use the photo, but I thought it was a really good thing to do, so that's what I done. Voigtland, 2¼ square Voigtland, and then a zenith, so on.
Did you have a lot of technical knowledge when you were going first?
No, I taught myself everything, or books, or advice from people, some workshops in New Zealand, but just self-taught, like most of us.
We were all at the airport photographs.
Where are they?
Where were they tonight?
There's only one. That was of Rangitoto. I took it from Devonport.
You consider Devonport to be a very pictorial place?
Yeah, well, I was born there, you see, and so I have a great feeling about the place. Yeah, I photograph it quite a lot, but mostly I don't show it. Oh, no, there are some around here, but I'll continue to go back there and photograph it.
How's your filing system, Kate?
My filing system is pretty bad, really. it's better than just cardboard boxes. I've got racks. They hang in sleeves on racks. I'm not sure if that's the best for the slides. And hundreds and hundreds of yellow boxes for the Kodachrome days.
So when the Kodachrome has to go to Australia?
It goes to Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you're still doing that?
No, very rarely now. No.
I mean, when you're living in Australia, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, here it just seems like
In Australia you get it back in 2 days, in England you get it in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So you use it.
Yeah.
But here, 3 weeks is far too long to
Yeah,
wait.
I couldn't cope.
No. You've got to know what you've taken pretty immediately. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I like to see something every day, just to make sure I'm...
Right, is it time for wine and jollity?
Yeah.
Well, if there's anything else, just ask me anytime.